Hallo en welkom by Fokus, ek is Lenet Francis. Later in die program praat ons met die Departement van Justisie oor die Nasionale Register vir Seksoortreders wat in 2009 bekendgestel is. Ons vind uit of die departement oor die nodige mannekrag beskik om die register op datum te hou en ook elke oortreder te monitor, sodra sy of hy haar vonnis uitgedien of boete betaal is. Maar eers, regskenners en burgerlike organisasies is van mening dat die Departement van Justisie se Nasionale Register vir Seksoortreders weens 'n groot agterstand moeilik op datum gehou kan word. Die departement beskik glo nie oor die mannekrag of die geld om enige van die seksoortreders wie se name op die register verskyn te monitor nie. Die register is in werking gestel om kinders en gestremdes teen seksoortreders te beskerm. Miljoene rande is bestee te midde van ewige kritiek deur verskeie rolspelers. Hier is Fokusregisseur Jolien Phyllis en kameraman Sam Sibi se verslag.
Die 17-jarige meisie van Snypark naby Soweto in Gauteng is met R2 vergoed nadat sy na bewering deur 'n groep mans verkrag is. Die eksplisiete seksvideo wys hoe die dogter haar vermeende verkragters soebat. Daarna is die video die kuberwêreld ingestuur.
Hulle het my almal verkrag. Ek het vir hulle gesê ek wil nie seks hê nie. Ek het vir hulle gesê ek wil dit nie hê nie.
Die meisie is voorheen verskeie kere as vermis aangegee, maar weer gevind. Die staat dreig nou om egter die ma van nalatigheid aan te kla, omdat sy nie hierdie keer die kind se verdwyning by die polisie aangemeld het nie.
She blames the justice system that when her daughter talks, the criminal justice system does not want to listen and the perpetrators, they go free. So it's one of the reasons that she decided she's no longer reporting some of these cases. Don't go out there and say you've taken my sister because my mother has been neglecting my sister. My mother has been a wonderful mother and as strong as a mother can be, who has been in presence of umntwana ongaphilanga kahle khanda. Iloko nje ngakusho, the system has failed us more than once. Amaphoyisa, we have cases, no arrest, no nothing. That's why I'm saying, mina nje, I don't believe in police anymore nje.
Leidens media berigte is die meisie ook in 2009 verkrag. Haar verkragter is glo na die voorval gedeporteer, maar die Dobsonville polisie in Soweto het bevestig dat daar wel 'n saak van verkrachting ondersoek is, maar dat sy nie haar verkragter kon identifiseer nie. Die direkteur van die Tswaranang Legal Advocacy Centrum, Lisa Wetten, het haar bedenkinge oor die nasionale register wat daarop gemik is om kinders en verstandelik gestremdes teen seksuele mishandeling te beskerm.
Only 4% of rapes result in a conviction. You can see the vast majority of those who harm children will never end up on that register.
Die sogenaamde seksregister sal rekord hou van seksoortreders wat werkgewers met keringsprosesse sal help. Dit sal ook verhoed dat seksoortreders nie in aanraking kom met kinders of gestremdes.
By contrast, the one by the Department of Social Development looks at anybody who has ever been convicted of physically harming or abusing a child, as well as sexually abusing a child or neglecting a child. So it's got a much broader focus. Not only that, you have to go onto that register, not only if you've been convicted in a court of law, but if, for example, at a school, you've been abusing a child and the case has never gone to court, if you found guilty and disciplined at that school, you are required to inform the Social Development and go on that register.
In Oktober verlede jaar het Fokus berig oor 'n minderjarige meisie van Rodepoort in Johannesburg wat deur 'n mede-mixed gebruiker verkrag is. Die man is dieselfde maand skuldig bevind aan statutêre verkrachting, omdat die staat nie die saak van verkrachting kon staaf nie. Die verkragter is met R5.000 beboet en as deel van sy vonnis moet sy naam ook in die register vir seksverwante sake aangeteken word.
Ons weet nie of sy naam op die register is nie en ons weet nie waar om te gaan om uit te vind is hy wel op die register aangemeld.
The only person who has access to that register is the registrar. Members of the general public cannot just write to them and say, I want to know if my next door neighbour harms children. That is not allowed.
Die enkelouer meen sy het alles in haar vermoë gedoen om te verseker dat haar kind die nodige berading kry om die trauma te verwerk. Maar die land se regstelsel het hulle nie steek gelaat.
Die verkragter het 'n kans gehad om te pleit vir versagtende omstandighede, maar toe hy my kind verkrag het, kon sy nie kans gekry het om by hom te pleit vir versagtende omstandighede.
Miljoene rande in belastinggeld is bestee om die register in plek te kry wat nog nie heeltemal in werking gestel is nie.
So I think if we amalgamated them into one, it would free up funds that we could look at, I think, into doing things like creating comprehensive treatment, care, management and counselling services for all victims and their families. And I think we should also really look at what do we do about those offenders who harm adults, because there's no way of keeping track of them.
Oortreders se straf sal bepaal hoe lank hulle name op die nasionale register vir seksoortreders sal verskyn. Die minimum tydsduur is 5 jaar.
Net hierna die Departement van Justisie praat oor die veelbesproke nasionale seksregister. Bly ingeskakel. Welkom terug. 'n Nasionale register met die name van seksoortreders is al vir byna 3 jaar in plek, maar 'n groot deel van die publiek is onbewus van die dokument. Soos ons aan die insetsel gehoor het, is dit ook nie maklik om toegang tot die register te verkry nie. Kenners meen so 'n register is 'n goeie idee, maar nie een wat in Suid-Afrika kan werk nie, weens die groot gebrek aan mannekrag in baie regeringsdepartemente. By my in die ateljee om oor die kwessie te praat is die waarnemende registrateur van die Nasionale Register vir Seksoortreders, Ntombi Chuluhane. Ntombi, thank you so much for your time this evening. If I had to phone you up tomorrow morning and I ask you how many sexual offenders are on the registry currently, what would be your answer?
My answer, thank you, Lynette, for having me. My answer will be that we have 2,437 currently registered.
And how does that process work? Because if someone is convicted, it automatically, particularly of a sexual offense, they are automatically registered. How long before an employer or a school or possibly anybody who has an interest in that person can gain access to that information?
I will answer this question in this way. Your question is two-pronged, and I'm going to answer it in different ways. For example, I will dwell into how the name will get registered and how soon will that happen. For example, let's say a court makes a conviction right now, today. As soon as that conviction is made, the magistrate or the judge will have to sign, there is a form called a Form 5. Will have to sign that. That is a conviction form. And as soon as that is signed and a prosecutor checks that that is in order, the clerk of the court or the registrar of the High Court will then fill the details of an offender. I have omitted that the magistrate or the judge will then have to inform the offender of the implications of the conviction. And then after which, making that information known to the offender, that information is filled into a Form 5, and soon afterwards, then it is put into the electronic ICMS, that is an electronic system that we keep in the department to record all the names of offenders. And then as soon as that is done, it will appear on my site immediately once that is completed. And I will have to wait for the original Form 5 that has the fingerprints and the fingerprint number to be faxed, not to be faxed rather, because I need the original forms. It will have to be posted by registered post, and once I receive that, then I will look into the accuracy of the information with what I have on the electronic system. Therefore, I will approve the offender as of that date. Now we're getting on to how will then one get access to that. I need to allude to the fact that the register itself, it's not a public document. You cannot, on a click of a button, go and say, I want to check if Ntombi is there, and then you will find my name there. You have to do by way of application through to my office. But again, you do not have to make a general inquiry into someone's details who is in the register. You will either have to be an employer, or you would have to be checking your own details, or you'd have to be a convicted offender who, historically, when you want to check whether or not your name is in the register, you'd have to be a licensing authority. By licensing authority, I mean those who register crèches, or probably you want to open the organization that has supervisory mandates over children, or you'll have to be a court as mandated by Section 48 of the Act.
Okay, I want to get back to the access in a moment. Let's just retract and talk about the insert. I want you to talk to me about the accusations that there's a backlog, accusations that there aren't enough people to process this information, manpower, resources. What seems to be the hassles here?
Currently, the Office of the Registrar, my office, is going to get capacity of people. Yes, we were still setting up what actually through work study, what kind of work, the volumes of work, how you're going to deal with that before you can establish that so that it go to DPSA and approved as a directorate or whatever. That assessment was still being made. It's been finalized, and we're having interviews in the next month or so. Then we will be able to fill the staff, especially the crucial staff of foot soldiers, where we have the data capturers that are going to capture that data into the system, as well as the administrative officials that are going to be assisting. We're currently working on that and should be able to have capacity that will be up and running. The backlog part of it, it's the backlog that relates to historic convictions. With current convictions, we don't have any backlog because immediately, like I explained, your orders will be coming into the system and will be approved immediately. The backlog is with regard to the historic convictions. By historic convictions, we mean all those convictions that were made by a court from the 29th, retrospectively, because there is a retrospective effect that is built into the Act.
So are you telling me tonight that we are still stuck in phase 2 of implementation?
No, we're not stuck. We're implementing phase 2. I can announce that we have received over 39,000 of historic convictions from SAPS. You must remember that SAPS is now currently the only institution that has the Criminal Record Center database, which is why we are now electronically, because we don't have the electronic interface yet. Now they have sent us that information. We have started implementing phase 2 manually, even though the Act requires that you have to keep the register in a prescribed, in a prescribed format. Yes.
So since 2009, and we're in 2012 now, how big is your staff component in your office?
It's supposed to be, I'm supposed to have 13 more support staff.
How many do you have currently?
Currently, I have 4 clerks that are assisting me.
So you literally do everything else and have to manage and delegate the 4 clerks?
Yeah, at national office. Remember, we have the court clerks at the regional offices.
Sorry to interrupt you. Are you convinced that this register is effective in combating sexual offenders?
Yes, very effective, Lynette, because apart from having the 39,000 that we have to put in the register, we are now up and running with 2,400 and odd cases that are recorded in the register. So I'm very confident that we are effective. And with the staff that I have, you must remember that my duty as the registrar is to approve that which is sent by the court. So at court level, we have staff. We have more than 1,005 court clerks that are submitting that information from all provinces countrywide.
But you're still not permanently appointed in this position?
I am permanently appointed. You are not. I am a Director Legal Services, and I'm seconded into that office.
A lot of the claims and the concerns that Lisa Vetten also raised in our insert was about access, and you said there has to be an application.
Yes.
The problem, I think, with a lot of our viewers, and a lot of criticism has been raised at that, because I'm at a school, I don't necessarily want to appoint the teacher, or that teacher moves into my neighborhood. I want to know whether my child is safe. How else do I check that? How else do I have the reassurance that my child is not unduly exposed?
You see, in a position of a teacher, the school, as of the moment when the register came into place, all those schools, private sector that are working with children would automatically, not automatically for lack of a better word, practically have to apply to the register to check that we call a vetting process, where you check whether or not the details of the offender are actually registered there. I mean, the details of a teacher, the details of everybody else that works or have supervisory rights over a child. So if you are employing that teacher, yes, you have to apply to the register, because you see, the reason there is a limitation of access. Remember that as the department, when you are passing legislation, you look into the rights and obligations that are in there. So the obligation of the department, again, was to look into the right of an offender as well as the right of the victim, in saying that once you have all those vexatious and frivolous applicants who just wants to see whether or not your name appears just for the sake of it, we are also protecting the right of privacy of a person that will apply. Therefore, we make sure that the persons or the people who apply through the register are people who are entitled to apply for that information.
When we come back, we need to talk about monitoring and whether you know where all these offenders are. Net hierna sit ons die gesprek voort, bly ingeskakel. Welkom terug. Ons het die gesprek voort oor die nasionale seksregister waarop die name van seksoortreders landwyd moet verskyn. And Tommy, before we went to break, you said earlier that there were just over 2,000 registered sexual offenders on the National Sexual Registry. Do you know where they are?
Definitely not. Because for one particular reason, the monitoring aspect in the register is limited. Limited to the sense that as the Department of Justice, we do not do the monitoring just like your monitoring that you will have with your Department of Correctional Services probation officer when a person is on probation. That one, we record the names of offenders, just the same way as we would record the historic convictions, not knowing where the person is. And the thing that makes it, or the monitoring to be limited, is because of the confidentiality clause that is built into the register. You come to know of the offender, or you come to know of the person that you are vetting once there is an application that is lodged. You know, unlike international registers, wherein it's kept by the Department of Police, wherein if a person moves, then they have to say, I am moving to such and such a place. That is how you can be able to capture or monitor the movement of a person.
So this registry could actually be more effective if we had that built in, that aspect of tracking the person.
Yes, that's my opinion.
So, say for example, I'm appointing someone tomorrow at my school. What you said you could get a clearance certificate. How long would I as the principal wait for that? And is it my responsibility to inform the parents of the children attending that school that there is someone that's been registered?
Yes, because you will then be an employer, and as an employer, you have to apply for a clearance certificate in respect of an employee. And the duration upon which it will take, the Act stipulates that it will take 10 working days. However, the 10 working days might be a challenge because as the Department of Justice, we do not vet a person according to a fingerprint. A fingerprint process is the other separate process that is dealt by South African Police Service, because they are the custodian of the automated fingerprint system. So when we vet a person, we send it to South African Police Service for them to say whether or not this person is actually, or the victim is actually a child or a mentally disabled person. Therefore, when it returns back to me, then that's when I will say your name does or does not appear on the register. Because one other aspect that is built in the register, which is why it is not so easy, we are focused on two categories of people. And previously, when we convicted a person, we did not put who the victim was. It is only the legislative requirement now that the victims or the victim's details have to be recorded as such. So that is why we have to vet through Criminal Record Center who the victim actually was. Because if that information was readily available, I will say yes, in 10 working days, we'll be able to print and say your name is not there.
So may not receive it in 10 working days.
Yeah, because
may not know where the person is if they move to another province because there's no way to track them. They might be offending and being involved in criminal activity as we speak. So what assurances do we have?
You see, the Act in itself, we have published that last year during the 16 days of activism as raising awareness and also, alerting all the citizens that under Section 54 of the Act, when you are aware that a sexual offense is being committed against a child or mentally disabled person, it is within your prerogative, or you've got that responsibility to report such to the police, just in the same way as you would know that this is an offender, or a serial child offender. If you know of that information, you bring such to the police, who will then take the process forward. I think for now, that is the process in which we can be able to monitor the movement.
There's a saying, forewarned is forearmed. If people have knowledge, then they can respond, respectively. If they are so dependent on the knowledge that the registry has, how can they really respond? Because they don't know. You were just saying that if they are aware of it, people want to be able to protect the children before they become aware of it.
It's true. Just like I've alluded before, of its limitedness, the limited nature of monitoring. And not only would you have the monitoring only by the National Register for Sex Offenders, there are other, avenues that will, in actual fact, be monitoring whether or not this is an offender. For example, sexual offenses has got the involvement of such stakeholders like South African Police Service, the Department of Correctional Services, the courts, the Department of Health, as well as the Department of Justice and Social Development as well, in a manner in which each and every case gets reported. For example, the Act, it confers some responsibilities to the Department of Correctional Services that from the moment this Act came into being, you have to inform all your current convicted prisoners that once the conviction has been of a sexual offense in nature against a child and a mentally disabled person, when you send their names to us, you have also to inform those people accordingly that their names are going to be added, and the implication being this.
And are they on some kind of parole then, those convicted offenders?
All of them.
Yeah, okay.
Whether on parole, whether you're currently serving, or whether you've been released.
And they're not supposed to have any access to children. Who's enforcing that?
The police, the National Register, Department of Correctional Services. Like I'm saying, that we're working as the JCPS cluster, but the enforcement thereof is not your kind of enforcement that, let's say, for example, we're talking about a paroled person. A paroled person, you will have a parole officer having to see whether or not they are not re-offending.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it at that. But as I said, I think it's not that effective. But thank you so much for your time. Dit was dan vanaand se Fokus, en hier by Fokus is ons omtrent opgewonde oor senior regisseur Karen Dolwiel wat vanjaar weer 2 pryse by die ATKV Media Veertjie toekennings ingepalm het. Die ATKV vereer so joernaliste in die Afrikaanse media, die koerante, radio en televisie, en die gala geleentheid word jaarliks in Johannesburg gehou. Karen se program as die Karoo Kraak is as beste program in die nuusaktualiteitskategorie aangewys, en haar insetsel met helende harte en hande is as beste insetsel bekroon. Baie geluk, kollega, van die hele span en al die kykers van Fokus. Dit was dan ons program vanaand. Kykers se kommentaar en voorstelle is altyd welkom. Skryf net die woord Fokus gevolg deur 'n kort boodskap en SMS dit na 34444. 'n SMS kos R2. En u kan gerus ook 'n lid word van ons Fokus groep, en dit op Facebook. Geniet die Vryheidsdag vieringe eerskomende Vrydag en dan ook die lang naweek. Asseblief ry veilig en bly veilig. Van my Lenet Francis en die res van die Fokusspan. Totsiens tot volgende Sondag aand.